Hello everyone, and welcome. I'm excited to be here with you today as we explore the fascinating world of local history. On this first slide, you'll see the title, Exploring the People, Places, and Events that Shape Our Communities, and understanding how the stories closest to us illuminate the broader sweep of national history. We'll be looking at how the stories from our own neighborhoods help us understand the larger story of our country. Over the course of this presentation, we'll dive into different people, places, and events that have made a difference locally and how they connect to history on a bigger scale. I'm glad you're here, and I look forward to sharing this journey with you. Fostering an increased interest in the broader subject of history, this approach moves students beyond simple memorization of names, dates, and places. Instead, it encourages us to explore the stories and narratives surrounding specific individuals, locations, and events. This not only makes history more engaging, but also helps students develop a stronger sense of realism that's relevant to their own surroundings. By breaking down the boundaries between academic subjects and everyday life, local history turns into a living, breathing experience. It invites us to utilize our community and its institutions as a kind of living laboratory for learning. This creates a sense of immediacy and connection, helping students see the relevance of history both in the past and in their present lives. Why does this matter in the classroom? Well, while local history can shed light on larger national events, it also has intrinsic value on its own. It focuses on the stories of smaller communities, those where we live, and explores the people and events that are most familiar to us. This approach makes history captivating because it offers a personal, family, and community perspective. As historians and educators often note, local history acts like a magazine filled with vivid illustrations that reflect the broader course of national history. It's a powerful way to understand the world through the lens of our own neighborhoods and experiences. So, what exactly is local history? Simply put, it's the history of our immediate surroundings, the places, people, and events that shape our daily lives. It's about understanding how these local stories connect to bigger historical themes, making history both accessible and meaningful right where we are. When we talk about local history, we're really talking about transforming how we study the past. Instead of seeing history as just a collection of distant facts, local history makes it a lived experience. It's about engaging with the community around us, listening to stories, understanding local traditions, and connecting with places that matter to us. By doing this, students develop a real, authentic connection to history. It becomes more than just dates and events. It turns into an ongoing story, something that's happening now, and in which they are active participants. This approach helps bring the past to life and makes history feel relevant and personal. It's a powerful way to see history not as something separate from our lives, but as a part of who we are and our community's story. When an event happens, it's often recorded by someone observing it or talked about with others. The way we perceive and present that event is called an interpretation. Local history is especially good at this because it allows us to examine specific evidence from particular places, like Fort Pillar in Zamboanga. Understanding interpretation is crucial because it helps us think critically about the information we encounter. To do that, we need to develop new ways of thinking about data and introduce new terms that help us analyze better. Instead of just passively receiving information, students should become active investigators. That means questioning sources, looking closely at evidence, and constructing their own understanding. One of our main goals in using local history in the classroom is to involve students directly. Simply gathering data or facts isn't enough to truly engage them. They need to be encouraged to analyze what they find, ask questions, and develop a genuine motivation to understand the material deeply. Let's take a closer look at the different types of historical sources and why they are so important. Primary sources are like direct links to the past. They give us first-hand accounts from the people involved or events that happened. These include eyewitness stories, which are incredibly valuable because they form the foundation for how historians interpret history. Then we have transmitted stories, songs, and traditions. These are especially crucial in communities where written records might be scarce or non-existent. They help preserve community memory and cultural identity over generations. This is where folklore and oral literature come into play, acting as living records that keep history alive through storytelling. Moving on, correspondence between individuals, such as letters, can reveal personal perspectives, relationships, and the social context of a specific time and place. They give us a glimpse into the thoughts and emotions of people who experienced historical events firsthand. Personal records like diaries and journals are another rich source. They capture personal experiences, emotions, and observations, providing a detailed, intimate view of life during particular moments in history. Finally, understanding these various sources, whether oral traditions, letters, or diaries, is central to practicing local history. They form the evidence we analyze to build a fuller picture of the past. By studying these sources carefully, we can piece together stories that might otherwise be lost and gain a deeper understanding of history from multiple perspectives. So, it's important to recognize that our knowledge of history is inherently fragmented. Observers tend to record what they see as significant and often interpret these events through their own perspectives. This means that different people might focus on different details or use different facts to describe the same event. When we look at primary sources, we're seeing direct, first-hand accounts created during or immediately after an event. Things like diaries, letters, photographs, official documents, or oral testimonies. These sources are incredibly valuable because they give us the closest connection possible to what actually happened. But of course, they also come with challenges, like issues with legibility, preservation, or the context in which they were created. Now, secondary sources are a different story. These are accounts written after the fact by historians or scholars. They interpret, analyze, and synthesize primary evidence to provide broader context. While secondary sources help us understand the bigger picture, they are always one step removed from the original event. For students engaging with primary sources, it's crucial to understand their nature and background. Knowing how they were created, their physical characteristics, and the challenges they present, like legibility or preservation issues, is key to interpreting them accurately. In essence, distinguishing between primary and secondary sources helps us develop a more nuanced understanding of history, especially when piecing together local stories and events. When we think about history, it's easy to focus on the famous figures, the leaders, the inventors, the icons. But what Beckett reminds us here is that history isn't just about those well-known individuals. It's also about the everyday people, ordinary folks, who live through events, who record what they experience, and who describe how those events affect their lives. This perspective is crucial because it broadens our understanding of the past. It shows us that history is shaped not only by the powerful, but also by the countless individuals whose stories might otherwise go unheard. It ties directly into our overall theme, which emphasizes the importance of diverse perspectives. By recognizing the role of ordinary people, we gain a richer, more complete picture of history, one that values every voice and every story. When selecting the most suitable documents for research, it's essential to understand their origins, how they have been preserved, their legibility, and the circumstances under which they were written. These factors can significantly impact how we interpret the information they contain. Now, a key idea to keep in mind is the importance of contextual understanding. This means looking beyond just the words on the page to consider the underlying assumptions, values, biases, and social context embedded within the document. Often, what's left unsaid, or what the author takes for granted, can tell us just as much as the explicit content. Speaking of explicit content, that's what we refer to as apparent information. The facts, names, dates, and events that are directly stated by the author. It's what's immediately visible and easy to identify. But true historical inquiry involves more than just surface details. Students should learn to read documents not only for their apparent information, but also for the implicit information that's embedded beneath the surface. This could be the tone, the choice of words, or what's omitted altogether. Encouraging students to examine primary sources closely helps reveal this richness. When they do this, they become more engaged and can better understand the deeper meanings and context behind the documents. Ultimately, reading documents deeply means analyzing both what's explicitly stated and what's implied, which allows for a more nuanced and comprehensive understanding of history. When we approach any source, it's really important to be aware of both the author's biases and our own. This helps us avoid taking information at face value and encourages a more critical perspective. Students should also be encouraged to ask questions continuously throughout their research. History isn't just about memorizing facts, it's a process of questioning and answering. This process enables us to develop a deeper understanding of the past, the present, and even what might come in the future. Now let's talk about some key criteria for evaluating sources. First, we need to consider proximity. How close was the observer to the event, both in time and place? Generally, the closer they are, the more reliable their account tends to be. But remember, proximity alone doesn't guarantee objectivity. Next up is impartiality. Was the observer neutral, or did they have a personal stake in how the event was portrayed? Recognizing potential biases or motivations is essential for critical reading. And finally, competence. Did the observer have the necessary knowledge, skills, or access to accurately record what they witnessed? The more competent the observer, the more detailed and accurate their account is likely to be. All of these criteria help us establish the worth of a source. By carefully evaluating these aspects, we can determine how useful or credible a source might be in our historical inquiries. Remember, approaching sources critically is fundamental to responsible and effective historical thinking, and it brings us closer to understanding the true story behind the facts. When students engage with the history of their own communities, they gain important tools for understanding the world around them. This isn't just about memorizing dates or events. It's about developing critical thinking skills, learning how to evaluate sources, question assumptions, and construct their own narratives. These skills are essential because they help students see the bigger picture and understand how the past shapes the present. It's also important to recognize that our goal isn't to turn students into professional historians. Instead, we're preparing them as future citizens who can participate actively and thoughtfully in their communities and society. The skills they develop through local history, like questioning, analyzing, and storytelling, are the foundation for informed civic engagement. This broader purpose ties into the bigger theme of the presentation, equipping students not just with knowledge, but with the abilities to contribute meaningfully to ongoing conversations and the future of their communities. Local museums and archives offer a fresh perspective on our community. Often, when we study history, we tend to focus on big-picture events. These might include the rise and fall of civilizations or major social and economic changes that impact entire nations. While understanding these large-scale processes is definitely important, it's also crucial to recognize that history is made up of individual stories, families, localities, and communities. These smaller, personal experiences contribute to the bigger picture and are shaped by history just as much as the grand events are. By exploring local history, we get a more complete and personal understanding of the past. This helps us appreciate how our own community has been influenced by and has contributed to history. It reminds us that history isn't just about the past, it's about us, right here, right now. While understanding the broader history, like the Long Depression of the late 19th century, gives us a big-picture perspective, local history helps us see how these events actually affected real people. For example, take the Kishom brothers from Oakville. They traveled to Buffalo chasing opportunities in coal mining. These personal stories turn grand patterns of change into tangible, relatable experiences that bring history to life. Moving on, the advent of automobiles was a huge societal shift. It changed how people traveled and communicated, making these things more accessible than ever before. By diving into local stories, we can find accounts of the first cars in a town, what people thought about them, and how they started to reshape daily life. These stories help us see how a major technological change translated into human experiences we can relate to. Finally, local history acts like a microcosm, offering a detailed view of how larger societal changes played out in everyday lives. It's in these small stories that we find a powerful illustration of how history really impacted individuals, showing us that these broad patterns are made up of countless personal stories. Studying local history helps us develop a deep awareness that change over time is driven by countless individuals and their unique contributions to our community's ongoing story. This understanding is truly valuable and worth preserving. For instance, Cotabato City's name comes from the Maguindanao phrase, Cutawato, and the Malay Bruneian Kota Batu, both meaning city of stone. This gives us a glimpse into its rich cultural roots. By researching the history of Cotabato City, we've uncovered meanings behind names and places that we might have previously overlooked. It's amazing how much history is hidden right in our own backyard. You don't have to travel to famous historical sites abroad to see the past reflected. Our communities are full of locations and records with rich stories, places that tell us about our heritage. Local history teaches us about community. Even something as simple as street names or local landmarks can reveal the deep roots and stories of past generations. Often, we're unaware of the origins behind our surroundings, but when we take the time to explore those stories, our perception of the present can change dramatically. This is what I like to call community as living heritage. History is all around us, embedded in our everyday environment. Recognizing this helps us appreciate our shared past and understand how it shapes who we are today. The name Cotabato, derived from Cutawato in Maguindanao and Kota Batu in Malay Bruneian, serves as a fascinating reminder that history is embedded in the very language of our places. Every place name, including Cotabato, carries a story waiting to be uncovered, connecting us to our past. When we say Cotabato City, also known as the City of Stone, it hints at its historical significance and resilience. This name invites us to explore how our history and language shape our identity, emphasizing the importance of understanding the roots beneath our modern city. It's a perfect example of how names are more than just labels. They are stories etched into our landscape, reminding us of our rich heritage. It's unfortunate, but a significant number of Filipino individuals today lack interest in or understanding of our own Philippine history. This gap can often be traced back to a limited exposure to our historical background, which makes it harder for us to appreciate the richness of our past. Additionally, many people tend to overlook the value of history in our present lives, seeing it as something distant or irrelevant. Another challenge is the scarcity of accessible materials, especially those focused on local history, which is actually the part of history that resonates most closely with us as Filipinos. This is why emphasizing the importance of local history within the broader scope of Philippine history is so crucial. When we understand and appreciate our local stories, traditions, and historical milestones, we foster a stronger sense of identity and pride. It helps us connect the past to our present and guides us in building a future rooted in our unique cultural heritage. So, highlighting local history isn't just about remembering the past. It's about enriching our understanding of ourselves and inspiring us to value our history more deeply. When we talk about the problem of historiography in the Philippines, it's important to recognize that historians, whether Filipino or foreign, can't be solely blamed for this issue. The root of the problem actually lies in the very nature of how Philippine history has been written for a long time. Historically, there was a strict adherence to Western standards that emphasized written sources as the only valid evidence. This approach is often summarized by the phrase, "no document, no history." Essentially, if something wasn't documented in writing, it was considered less important or even irrelevant. This way of writing history has led to a significant misrepresentation of our past. It tends to overlook the rich, diverse experiences of different ethnic groups across the many scattered islands of the Philippines. Our regional identities, which are so vital to understanding who we are as a nation, are often underrepresented or even omitted from the national narrative. This creates a skewed picture of our history that doesn't fully reflect the variety of our cultural and historical experiences. Furthermore, the conventional understanding of Filipino history tends to be quite limited and unbalanced. It often centers mainly on central Luzon, especially the Tagalog region, as if that's the only or the most important part of our story. Events, developments, and key figures from the Visayas and Mindanao are frequently mentioned only in passing, or sometimes not at all. This narrow focus leaves out a big part of our national story and diminishes the richness of our collective identity. This brings us to a crucial point: local history. If we want to truly understand and build a comprehensive national history, we can't ignore the significance of local histories. They are essential pieces of the puzzle. Recognizing and studying these diverse regional narratives helps us appreciate the full scope of our history, highlighting the unique contributions of each group and area. In sum, the limits of conventional Philippine history show us that we need to broaden our perspective. By integrating local histories and embracing diverse sources and narratives, we can develop a more accurate and inclusive understanding of our past, one that truly reflects the multifaceted nature of our nation. Yet, the view of Filipino history and struggles can predominantly be found in oral literature. Songs, epics, folk narratives, and oral traditions carry the authentic voices of communities whose experiences were never captured in colonial documents. Recognizing oral sources as legitimate historical evidence is essential to recovering the full breadth of Filipino history. The power of oral literature lies in its ability to preserve stories and cultural identity that might otherwise be lost. The absence of written materials by Filipinos in their localities has limited the scope of our national historians. Most of the data we have about Philippine history has come from colonial sources, which are often biased or incomplete. This reliance on written records, especially primary sources, has made it difficult for us to tell a full and accurate story of our people's experiences. So, understanding and valuing oral literature is crucial. It helps us fill in the gaps and see a more comprehensive picture of our history, one that truly reflects the voices and struggles of Filipinos throughout the ages. A nation, at its core, is made up of various parts: regions, provinces, cities, and municipalities. These are the building blocks that come together to form the whole. And importantly, when we look at the history of a nation, it's really a tapestry woven from the stories and experiences of these individual parts. Each region or city has its own unique past, its own developments, challenges, and triumphs. When we piece all these histories together, we get a fuller, richer understanding of the nation's story as a whole. This perspective reminds us that a nation isn't just a political entity, but a collection of diverse, interconnected communities whose histories shape the larger narrative we're exploring today. Let's explore how local history encompasses the development of institutions within a specific geographical area, along with the triumphs and setbacks experienced by its people. This is what we might call the granular texture of national progress. It's about understanding the detailed story of a community or locality. Now, when we talk about institutions and development, remember that local history is often the most personal and meaningful to people. It reflects their identity, their experiences, and their hopes for the future. Think of it as an interpretative recreation of a locality's past, covering its political, social, economic, and cultural life. It's a way for us to see ourselves within the broader narrative of history. This brings us to the idea of locality and identity. Local history is close to the hearts of people because it mirrors who they are and where they come from. It helps shape a sense of community and belonging. To put this into perspective, I like to use the analogy of an auto mechanic. Just as a mechanic understands a whole machine by knowing its individual parts, understanding national history requires us to look closely at local history. Each part, each locality, contributes to the bigger picture. and no town or province operates in isolation from the nation. The local and the national are interconnected. To truly understand the whole, we need to understand the parts, the local histories that make up the national story. So, when we view national history through local lenses, we gain a richer, more nuanced understanding of how our country has developed. It's about recognizing that the story of the nation is built through the stories of its communities and regions. By doing so, we can see that local history actually enriches our national history. This helps to correct the common misconception that Philippine history is mostly centered around Manila and its nearby areas. As Fonteca, 2008, emphasizes, we need to recognize the broader scope of our history beyond the capital. The solution to this issue lies in actively enriching and revising our national history to make it more complete and accurate. This responsibility primarily rests with our local communities. Each community should strive to provide accurate and comprehensive accounts of their own people's historical experiences. When we appreciate our own locality's history, it becomes crucial for understanding and truly appreciating Philippine history as a whole. Understanding and appreciating our country's history requires us to be familiar with our own town's history, its contributions to regional development, and its role in nation building. We cannot have a comprehensive understanding of Filipinos and the Philippines without studying the history of our town, city, province, or region. So, the path to understanding our national story begins at the local level. Local history plays a vital role in nation building because it forms the foundation of our collective identity. When we recognize the importance of our local histories, we help create a richer, more inclusive national narrative that truly reflects the diverse experiences of all Filipinos. When we talk about grounding the national story in the lived realities of every region, province, and municipality, what we're really emphasizing is the importance of local history. It's about acknowledging the diverse experiences across the Philippines and showing how these stories contribute to our collective identity. By doing this, local history actually strengthens our sense of being Filipino, rather than dividing us into smaller groups. It creates a sense of inclusion, where everyone's story matters and adds to the bigger picture. Some might worry that focusing on local histories could lead to regionalism, but that's a misconception. In fact, understanding local histories helps us appreciate the entire Filipino experience. It deepens our understanding of our shared heritage and makes our national identity richer and more inclusive. This approach reminds us that our national story is built from the many stories across different regions, not in spite of them. So, in essence, local history is a tool that unites us. It helps us see how diverse experiences come together to form the Filipino identity, reinforcing the idea that our strength lies in our shared heritage, rooted in the unique stories of each place. Let's talk about why local history is so crucial in building a truly comprehensive Philippine history. It's not just about the big national stories, but about including all regions, ethnic groups, and oral traditions that make our history rich and diverse. When we focus on local history, we turn broad patterns of change into real human stories that we can relate to, stories about communities and everyday lives. This helps us see that history isn't something distant or abstract. It's all around us, in our neighborhoods, in our families, and in our shared experiences. Understanding local history reminds us why it matters, because it gives voice to different perspectives and helps us understand the complexity of our past. When evaluating sources, always think about proximity, how close the source is to the event, impartiality, whether the source is biased, and your own awareness of those biases. This careful assessment allows us to better appreciate the reliability of what we're learning. In the classroom, involving students directly, through critical analysis, engaging with primary and secondary sources, and understanding different interpretations, makes learning more meaningful. It encourages them to see history from personal, family, and community viewpoints. This approach helps students realize that history is vivid and alive, reflected in their own stories and surroundings, making the past relevant and tangible for everyone. Let's talk about how we can connect our local stories to the bigger picture, both nationally and globally. It's important to see how our community's experiences fit into the larger historical narrative of our country and the world. By doing this, we not only preserve our unique stories, but also understand their significance in a broader context. Recording and sharing the stories of our elders and community members is a vital step. These stories are treasures that might otherwise be lost over time. By capturing their memories now, we ensure future generations can learn from them and keep our history alive. Asking about the origins of place names, institutions, and traditions around us helps deepen our understanding of where we come from. These details reveal the rich history behind our surroundings and help us appreciate the cultural heritage embedded in our daily lives. Visiting local museums, archives, and heritage sites is another way to connect with our history. These places hold valuable artifacts and stories that bring our past to life, making history tangible and real for us. From the stone walls of Fort Pillar to the street names of Cotabato City, and from the letters of ordinary families to the oral epics of Mindanao, these elements remind us that every community, every person, and every story is part of the larger narrative of the Filipino people. Our local history is a vital thread in the national fabric. Remember, history belongs to everyone. It's not just about the past, it's about understanding who we are today and shaping who we want to become tomorrow. Our stories, no matter how small they seem, contribute to the ongoing story of our nation.